Hola a todos, una nueva edición de AngularMálaga, la de junio del 2020, y presentamos como siempre Estefanía García, desarrolladora full stack y creadora de NPKill junto a Juan, y un servidor, Carlos Caballero, profesor y amante del open source. En esta edición online vamos a tener a un ponente internacional desde Alemania. Para el que no lo conozca, Jan-Niklas Wortmann, el cual forma parte del core del RxJS. Entonces, su charla va a ser en inglés y, por tanto, la presentación la vamos a hacer entre Estefanía y yo. Yo haré la versión española y Estefanía irá presentando lo mismo que yo, pero en versión inglesa.
So, hi everyone, welcome to the AngularMálaga June edition. So, as always, myself and Carlos will be your hosts for the event. So, for those who don't know me, I'm Estefanía García. I'm a full stack developer and I'm the creator of NPKill, which is a very nice little tool if anyone wants to check it out. And my colleagues, Carlos Caballero, who's a professor and a lover of open source. And backstage, we have Juan Torres, who's an amazing technician, and he's hosting, all the streaming technical parts. He's in charge of those. So for this online edition, we are super lucky to have the amazing Jan-Niklas Wortmann with us, who is part of the RxJS Core Team, and he's joining us all the way from Germany. So that's amazing. And considering we have an international speaker and international attendees, as you may already have noticed, we are going to do the presentation in both English and Spanish, so everyone knows what's going on.
Bien, pues AngularMálaga es una de las tantas comunidades de Angular que existen alrededor del mundo que tratan temas del framework de Angular. Bien sabéis que la comunidad está abierta tanto a JavaScript, TypeScript y otros temas que giran alrededor de Angular, no solo Angular, ¿vale? Ahí veis una captura del proyecto de Angular Communities, donde podéis encontrar que cada día hay más comunidades locales donde se encuentran desarrolladores que nos une el interés por el framework Angular. Fijaros que ahí hemos puesto una captura en principio de Europa. Si entráis en angular-communities.com vais a ver que hay un montón de comunidades locales como nosotros.
Okay, so AngularMálaga is an initiative that's born in Malaga, and it's driven by AngularMálaga developers. So as you can see on the map that you have on the screen, there are so many communities around the world. Even though the screenshot is just of Europe, there's so many around the world, like I already said. So we decided to put together a little project called angularcommunities.com, where you can find the world map and with the location of all the Angular communities around the world, and you can find information about them. So in case anyone wants to check it out, it's angular-communities.com. Okay.
Bien, pues AngularMálaga tiene varios colaboradores, entre ellos destacan organizaciones y eventos tecnológicos, como pueden ser la NG Vikings, la NG de Colombia o Link by UMA, que es donde hemos estado desarrollando nuestros encuentros cuando ha sido físico. Y supongo que cuando todo vuelva a la normalidad, pues volveremos a estar en nuestra sede. Respecto a los sponsors y patrocinadores, ya sabéis que la comunidad siempre está abierta a integrarse con el ecosistema empresarial. Por tanto, todas las empresas que quieran ser patrocinadoras de AngularMálaga y apoyar a la comunidad para que sigamos creciendo, solamente tiene que ponerse en contacto con nosotros.
So we are very lucky to have several partners, among which are organizations like Link by UMA, which very generously provides us with the space where we usually host our on-site meetups when there isn't a global pandemic going on, And there's also several technological events that partner with us, like NGConf Colombia, RxJS Live, which I think is being hosted in London this year, and the NG Vikings conference. So regarding sponsors, I'd like to say that our community is completely open, to collaborating with any companies out there that want to join us and contribute to making AngularMálaga greater. So if there's anyone out there who works or is part of a company that works with Angular and would like to help us out, please reach out and we'll have a chat about sponsorship. So please do.
Ok, pues ahí podéis ver cómo localizarnos, tanto en las cuentas de correo como en la siguiente diapositiva, que voy a echarla para adelante y después para atrás, para la versión inglesa, donde encontráis tanto el Meetup como el Twitter, en caso de que queráis poneros en contacto con nosotros.
All right, so if you'd like to reach out to us, you can do so by writing an email to sponsor@angularmalaga.com if you'd like to talk to us about sponsorship, or contact@angularmalaga.com if you'd like to talk to us about any other subject. Sorry. And you can keep up with the latest news on our official website, which isn't on there, but it's angularmalaga.com. You can also find us very actively on Twitter. You have the username on the screen, and you can also find us on Meetup, which you already probably know because I think you had to register to be able to attend this online event. So that's basically it.
Ok, y ahora pues queremos hablaros sobre uno de los mayores eventos que se celebra en Latinoamérica, la NGConf de Colombia, y la comunidad de Angular Málaga es comunidad amiga del evento y, por tanto, tenemos la suerte de que nos han regalado 5 entradas para sortear entre todos nosotros. Entonces, para participar en el sorteo es muy sencillo. Únicamente hay que seguir la cuenta de Angular Málaga, que yo sé que todos ya la seguís, ¿vale? Y a la de NGConf de Colombia, ¿vale? NGConf.co, ahí lo pone en la diapositiva. Y retuitear el tweet del sorteo. Es decir, ahora mismo hay un tweet en el que simplemente tenéis que retuitear, de tal modo que entre todos los tweets vamos a escoger a 5 ganadores aleatorios, ¿vale? Que se van a llevar una entrada para la NGConf de Colombia. Y los amigos de la NGConf de Colombia pues nos han dejado un vídeo contándonos acerca del evento, que lo vamos a poner justo cuando termine la presentación Estefanía para la versión en inglés.
All right, so today we have a very special something going on, which is an NGConf Colombia giveaway. So basically, NGConf Colombia is one of the biggest events, Angular events, that's happening in South America, and we at Angular Málaga are community partners with NGConf Colombia. So the team provided us with 5 tickets, which we are going to give away now. So the instructions for entering the giveaway are very simple. Basically, all you have to do is follow us in Angular Málaga and follow NGConf.co. You have both usernames on the screen. And you have to retweet the giveaway tweet, which I think is the last one on the Angular Málaga feed. So I don't think you'll have any trouble finding that. Oh, yes, the team from NGConf has also given us a promotional video for their event, which we're going to watch right now. So, Juan, please play the video.
¿Sabías que en el mes de agosto se realizará NGConf 2020, la más grande e importante conferencia de Angular en Latinoamérica? Ante los momentos de dificultad por las cuales está atravesando el mundo, una de las cosas que definitivamente no se puede detener es el aprendizaje. Es por esto que este año decidimos realizarlo 100% virtual. Con este cambio, llegaremos a una asistencia nunca antes vista en toda Latinoamérica, y en donde, por supuesto, tú estás invitado a disfrutar de la mejor experiencia en conferencias virtuales. Podrás conocer de primera mano las mejores noticias, el mejor contenido e increíbles workshops, y de la mano de los mejores speakers de Angular en todo el mundo. Será una increíble experiencia, no te la puedes perder.
Y bueno, ahora ya sí ha llegado el momento de dar paso a nuestro ponente, que es lo importante, por lo que todos estáis aquí. Y como siempre, en el chat vamos a dejar para que podáis ir haciendo todas las preguntas que iremos haciéndoselas al ponente al finalizar.
Okay, so now's the moment that we've all been waiting for. Before we introduce Jan, I'd like to tell everyone that we will be hosting the question and answer at the end of Jan's talk, so as to not to interrupt him in the middle. So if anyone wants to ask Jan a question, all you have to do is write a question on the YouTube chat you can find on the right side of your screen, and type whatever question you want to ask him. And then at the end, when he's done talking, we will pass forward him the questions and he will answer them.
It's me. Hi, everyone. Welcome to my talk, Demystifying RxJS Operators. Apparently in Malaga. So I would like to introduce this talk pretty much with this statement, because everyone, especially Angular developers that are already using RxJS, pretty much everyone knows about operators to some extent, but barely anyone really knows about the internals of it. And I consider this some kind of problem. To deal with this in an appropriate way, I want to dive deep into the architecture of operators. And therefore, I want to start at a very high level with this quote that I took from the best website ever, without any mark here. So an operator is generally a mapping that acts on an element of a space to produce elements of another space. Well, this is apparently taken more like from a mathematical point of view, but it still fits kind of well what an operator is actually doing. It does some kind of transformation, but we'll look at this more in depth later on. So 2 more sentences about me, even though pretty much everything is already said, I think. So my name is Jan-Niklas Wortmann. I'm a self-employed front-end consultant, and since mid of 2018, I think I'm part of the RxJS Core Team. And I'm very excited to do this talk today in Malaga, or this virtual YouTube bubble. And again, if you have any questions, also if it's not directly related to that talk, but more or less to RxJS or Angular or whatever, feel free to drop a comment in the YouTube chat section. I'm happy to answer them afterwards. Yes. So one short disclaimer before we really dive deep into that. Some of the things that we now talk about might be heavy implementation details. And what I want to prevent is that you rely on all of this information for your internal implementation, whatever, and then out of a sudden this breaks. What I want to do is tell you about these details so that you are aware why this is implemented like this, how this is implemented, and how you can use it. But especially how this can treat this with a little bit of caution. So we have here the interface definition of RxJS. And again, I'm in the middle of one, but I hope you can forgive me. Yeah. So on the very top, we have the unary function, which is pretty much just defining a function that takes a source argument and returns some kind of value. This is pretty much it. Now this operator function takes or extends the unary function by accepting an observable as input source and returning another observable. This is the main important part of the operator implementation. Additionally, we have the monotype operator function, which is just like a nice way for some functions that have the same input type as output type. So for example, imagine filter. The filter operator doesn't manipulate the output type, it just manipulates the numbers of emission that happens. And therefore, we have these kind of type that just says, okay, the type that's coming in is the same as the type that is coming out. If we really want to treat this properly, just having the interface definition is not enough. This is very technical. What I want to have is some kind of definition, like what is an operator? And from my perspective, because right now there's no official statement what an operator can be considered. But from my perspective, there need to be 2 criteria fulfilled for an operator or for a function to be an operator. And the first one is that it needs to be composable in some way. And the other one is add behavior. Let's take a look in this a little bit more in detail. So, and therefore I want to talk about operators versus operators. So the most common example for an operator is the map operator. We have a function that we pass to the map operator, and it takes all the values coming from that observable and returning a new observable of a different value according to that projection function. So what we have with map is that it's some kind composable, and it's also, it adds behavior to the observer because it will apply this projection function. Why map? Why map? Why from is not an operator? Well, even though it's first not really composable and it doesn't add observable to an already existing observable, it creates an observable. So there's a difference between a creation function and an operator. Multicast is some kind of special. So multicast, the operator, has one method overloading that returns a connectable observable, as you can see here. And this connectable observable is kind of different from the normal observable. What that means is you need to call a connect method, and this will lead to the fact that the subject instance under the hood, passed here, subscribe to the source observable. By having such a connectable observable instead of the normal observable instance, this is not composable. We can't apply any other operator afterwards. So you have a method overload where you take this or pass a selector function that is applied on every source observable, and then you don't have this connectable observable instance. Then you end up with a operator that is a proper operator. So like rule of thumb is pretty much everything that goes into the pipe method can be considered an operator. Multicast is one of the exceptions. Partition is one of the exceptions. Just for you to be aware of those things. In general, we have these 6 responsibilities that an operator needs to take care of to be really considered an operator. It has to handle all the emissions, next, error, complete. It has to handle some kind of subscription to the source observable. It additionally has to handle the case of an unsubscription, either to the source observable or an inner observable in case of switch map. And then in the end, it has to return a new observable. I also want to highlight the things on the left side, because imagine an operator would just handle the next omission. And if we take a look at map, we might think this just handles the next omission because this is manipulated, but it will also forward error incomplete. Otherwise, every other operator afterwards wouldn't get that notification. So this is very important to notice here, that every operator at least have to bypass all the emissions happening. So now that we know a little bit about the responsibilities and the definition of operators, difficult word, let's talk about the pipe architecture, because this is pretty much the latest thing we introduced. So the pipe architecture is referring to this operator function that I showed before. I just want to refer to that here. So again, we define a function taking a source observable and returning another observable. What that means is we can write RxJS code like shown on this right side here, pretty much from the inside out. So we have our source observable where we apply a function to. And this is the same code, just using the pipe method or not. So what pipe is doing is inverting the call hierarchy here. Instead of saying, okay, we are calling from and apply these and that operator to them, we say like, okay, please apply tab to a source function, which takes another source function, which is from. And honestly, no one is able to read this properly. Like this is bullshit. So what we do here in the pipe method, again, this is a slightly reduced excerpt from the RxJS code base, actually. So what we're doing is having a huge reduce statement, and it's pretty much just calling the operator function with the return value of the function before. So the benefits are quite easy. For those of you that are already familiar with RxJS, those are aware that the main benefit of introducing this pipe architecture was improved tree-shakeability. Remember, before we had these weird import statement that no one was able to remember, and this actually under the hood performed a prototype patch on a global observable instance. What that means is every time you do this import, the observable entity is patched with a new function, for example, map, and then you can call observable.map. The problem with this was that modern tools like Webpack, Rollup, etc. were not able to find out, oh, is this import really needed anymore or not? And therefore, every time you imported that, this was actually performed, even though you never used the map operator afterwards. So this was like the biggest reason to introduce this. Another one, compared to this thingy I showed before, this is way more readable. This is a little bit of less benefit because still we didn't wrote RxJS code the way I showed before anyway. It's just technically possible. And one last benefit is that we improved the extensibility, because if you wanted to introduce custom RxJS operators before that pipe architecture, this was fairly complex, to be honest. And with this pipe architecture now, it's just function definition. And you can, as long as it has this shape, it's a function, taking a function with a source argument and returning an observable. That's it. You can have these kind of functions and pass it to pipe. That works flawlessly. So I want to talk a little bit more about this statement, because every operator returns a new observable. I showed that before in the responsibilities of the operator, and it's kind of true. But if it's actually really true, especially we in the Angular ecosystem, have some kind of piece or logic like this on a very thorough basis. So where we do like creating a subject and then pass it to take until. And we usually say, okay, subject as observable. But if every operator is returning a new observable instance, why should we pass as observable already here? Why should we not just take the subject instance here, like this? Beautiful animation. Professional. So the thing is, there's a small gotcha about this. If we take a look at the code again, we can do this and specifying a subject. But if we call operators on a subject instance, this won't return an observable instance. Even though the typings will say, oh, you used pipe, this returns an observable instance, here you go. Actually, at runtime, you will end up with this weird type anonymous subject, which is kind of tricky. So let's take a look at this a little bit more in detail. And to talk about this more in detail, we need to talk about the lift architecture. So lift is actually, or was introduced with RxJS 5. This was the big thing of RxJS 5 originally. And it consists out of these 3 bullet points. We have a call on source.lift, so source observable.lift. We have an operator class, and we have an operator subscriber. So I will show this all the process of the lift architecture with the example of map, because this is a quite comprehensible operator. Most of you will likely already use it to some extent. So we don't need to talk a little about the internals of that operator particularly. We can more focus on the architecture here. So what we do here is I added these highlights, I'm proud of me. So we have this call on source.lift. Source is just the source observable here, and we call the lift method on it. To this lift method, we pass a new instance of a so-called map operator where we pass through the arguments that were passed to that operator. So let's take a look into source lift. This is, if I remember correctly, the exact same code out of the RxJS code base. So what we have is we pass an operator to that method, and in the end we return an observable instance. So here we create a new observable instance to just ensure that every operator is immutable. Afterwards, we specify those 2 meter information for the source of the observable that we newly created, and we specify an operator meter attribute. In the end, we just return this new observable instance. So this, especially this operator meter attribute, is later on really important in the subscription process. So we will talk about this very piece more in detail afterwards. I should be aware that there's an animation, yeah. So the operator class is defined by this interface. One side note here, because I was very confused when I first looked into the RxJS code base, because when you use RxJS, it's pretty much the most, well, it's for sure pretty reactive, but it's also fairly functional programming style, especially since we introduced the pipe architecture. But the code base is so heavily object-oriented, it's nuts. Okay, sorry, back to the original topic. So within this operator interface, we specify one method, the call method, and this is actually where the logic of an operator happens. To that call method, we pass a subscriber and the source observable, which can be of type any, but it's usually an observable, and we return a teardown logic. Teardown logic is used inside the subscription class. So let's take a look in the map operator. So the map operator for sure takes a constructor that just that we have the projection function available, and also there's a method or a mechanism to bypass this argument, just in case you need that. But let's talk a little bit more about this call method. What we do is we pass a subscriber and a source. So the subscriber is actually coming from the subscription on that operator. So when I call subscribe, then this is the subscriber. And nope, there we are, sorry. And here we are returning source.subscribe. So the subscribe method returns a subscription object, which implements teardown logic. So there we are safe. And to this subscribe, we pass a new map subscriber. And this map subscriber takes a subscriber. This is not really important, but it takes the projection function. This is important. So let's see the operator subscriber. This is the most piece of code of this map operator, to be honest. So because this is where we treat the next emission in the end. This is a place where we say, oh, our source observable emitted some next value, and now we need to call the projection function. This is happening here. We call the projection function and emit it in the end. This is pretty much what's happening. This is try-catch mechanism around that, because technically there could be the case that inside this projection function that is passed by the user, there's an error thrown, and in this case, we catch it and return this value as an error, or emit it instead of just dying. Do notice here that we extend subscriber class. This is really important because the subscriber class will ensure that if you don't overwrite next error incomplete, these emissions are at least passed through the next operator. Otherwise, these value would be swallowed and not be emitted. And if you would imagine having catch error at the end of your pipe where you usually should place it, and if an operator wouldn't do that, then the error would not be forwarded to this operator and nothing would happen pretty much. So back to this point. Actually, I talked now a lot about the lift architecture, but still I didn't really elaborate why calling an operator on a subject instance returns an anonymous subject, even though the type signature will say this is an observable. The thing is, I already showed the observable lift method, right? That we remember this is what it's looked like. We would create a new observable instance, specify meta attributes, and return the observable instance. Well, the gotcha is actually that the subject method also implements a lift method, where we create this anonymous subject. And this anonymous subject also specify the meta attribute for operator and return the subject instance. There probably was a very smart reason behind this, but this type flaw is still in there, and we are right now considering improving that, even though please do notice that calling operators on subject instance directly is a bad practice. There's no reason to do that, and it will introduce behavior that you're not expecting. What you should do instead, if you really want to have this kind of behavior, say subject instance dot as observable, and then call pipe and pass the operators that you want to apply. Back to the original topic of the lift architecture. Why did we introduce this heavy concept? So first of all, the main reason was performance. Compared to RxJS 4, and honestly, I've never looked into the code base of RxJS 4, but compared to that, this kind of lift architecture introduced the performance really well. Because there was a performance flaw of anonymous functions in the V8 engine. So by running performance tests, we saw that this kind of architecture is way more performant than the one we had before. Another thing is that it's more customizable. And this is actually one of the things that I would like to introduce, because this is the central point in the RxJS architecture that everyone could hook in for something like this. So what we could do is create a custom observable instance that still extends observable, but implement the lift method on its own. And by doing so, we could wrap every operator that is passed to that in some other operator, for example, a lock operator. And by doing this, we could actually get access to the operator name and specify lock subscriber to have something like this. And this piece of code would actually lead to the fact shown here, even though I'm a little bit in the way here, but it's still kind of clear. So we are creating a new observable or new lock observable instance, emitting some values, and then calling some operators on that. And this would lead to the fact that every emission happening in every operator is locked sequentially. So don't be confused by this do operator. The do operator class is still behind the tab operator. If you remember before, pipeable architecture, tab used to be called do, but the operator class is not renamed yet. So do operator is tab. And you see all emissions happening within that. By having such a customizable and flexible API, this is, sorry, I was confused by my slides. This is also the point of time where you want to hook in if you want to create third-party libraries, for example. So if you want to create a browser extension to create model diagrams on the go for your observables for debugging purposes, this would be the place where you would like to hook in. And this is also one of the reasons why this exact same architecture is still in place as the way it is. And there's also no, at least not as far as I know, we don't think about changing this at all. We think about improving the flaw with the subject because this is just weird. But in general, this kind of architecture might stay in place. But this is also the thing where I said, okay, be cautious with the stuff I tell you. It's important to know that, and it's also good because you now know that you shouldn't call operators on subject instance. But if you build a browser extension based on this architecture, please don't expect it to be there forever. So this is not a feature that is right now actively used. So this might be a change without being an actual breaking change for most people. So, okay. I talked a lot about operators now. I also want to use that time now to talk a little bit about custom operators, because from my point of view, this is a feature that should be used way more. And in general, there are two different kinds of operators that you can have, or custom operators that you can have. They are like convenient operators and greenfield operators. So let's take a look into the convenient one. So I need to take a little bit of a trip here, because pretty much everyone is aware or does some kind of this, right? So if you have a magic string that is quite constant, you just assign it to a constant, right? If you have a complicated function, this is not really complicated, but if you have some kind of logic that could be wrapped together, you usually wrap it in a function. For some reason, if it gets more complicated, people don't tend to apply this mechanism, including me. So we have this kind of reduced statement, and without spending at least like 5 to 10 minutes, I think barely anyone is able to estimate what this reduced statement is doing out of the box. And apparently the same goes for RxJS code. And I don't want to blame anyone with this RxJS code because I wrote it and it's still running fine in production, so pretty much no one cares. But if everyone is able to understand what is happening here within minutes, or within 10 or 20 of minutes, This would be amazing, honestly. So when I looked at this, like, I think 2 or 3 weeks ago, my reaction was pretty much like this. Because it's just like, no one is able to understand that out of the box. And honestly, it would be so much easier just by grouping logic, grouping common things together and giving it a proper name. And apparently RxJS is doing this under the hood as well. So if you take a look at the start with operator, this is just a combination of concat with from. It's that easy. And concat map is just an alias for merge map with a concurrency value of 1. Share is just using this weird syntax that I showed before to not use the pipe method, but it's using ref count. It's pretty much using multicast and ref count under the hood. So what I want to encourage you to do is doing it the same for your projects. So what you can do is implementing a safe get operator that takes the source observable, because we know it's a get request that we're performing. We can apply the search map operator. And because we also know that we want to call catch error on the inner observable instead of on the outer observable, we immediately do that and force to specify an error behavior. So grouping these kind of things will make code more easier to read, easier to maintain. And I can really just encourage you to do this for your own projects. The other thing that is interesting, let's phrase it like this, are greenfield operators. Greenfield operators are operators that don't need to use any of the already existing operators. And honestly, I would be really curious to see what you're doing there. If you say like, okay, I need to have this operator, and there's no way I can implement this with other operators, because there are a lot of flaws that you can run into if you implement operators on your own. I would be really curious to see what you're doing. So the last one that we considered adding to the RxJS code base was switch scan. And honestly, I was against that because apparently no one really needs that. But this is some kind of thing that is difficult to implement on your own. And then we say like, okay, this might make sense. But honestly, there are like 100 different operators out there, not counting creation functions, not counting multicast, etc. So, yeah. Anyway, if you think you really want to build a custom operator on your own, I want to recommend you this talk of Ben and Tracy from, I think, last year's NGCon. They talked about this very much in detail, what you need to be aware of, what you should prevent, why you should do things, why you might want to use the lift architecture, why you might not want to use it, etc., etc. So if you're really interested into that topic more in detail, check out this talk. Otherwise, maybe you want to consider just using the already existing operators. This is pretty much all I got so far about operators. So here's a bit.ly link to the slides. And if you have a phone in your hand, you can scan this QR code as well. What happened here? Okay, anyway. And I really want to thank you all for your time and patience and listening to me about this topic. I really like talking to you about this. And I also want to thank the AngularMálaga organizers, because they did a marvelous job in organizing this. This was super professional. I'm still stunned by all this slideshow and hoof. If you have any questions afterwards, not really related, or there's something popping up in your mind like, oh, how was that with that lift architecture again? Feel free to shoot me a message on Twitter. I'm always happy to help you in terms of RxJS, Angular, whatever. That's all I got. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Jan. Okay, who's going to talk first? You or me, Carlos? Shall I go first? Okay, so thank you so much, Jan, for being with us here today. It was really, really amazing. So again, really, thank you. Especially because originally we were going to do this meetup about 2 weeks ago, but we ran into some trouble, which was basically me being quite sick. So Jan was an amazing person who was totally fine with rescheduling the meetup for today. So I'd also like to thank you for that. And over to you, Carlos.
No, Estefanía, lo que te iba a preguntar es, ¿hacemos el sorteo ahora o terminamos con las preguntas? ¿Tú cómo lo ves mejor?
Yo haría las preguntas primero, ¿no?
Pues, si quieres, voy a seleccionar una y tenemos que dar paso a Jan, ¿vale? Lo dicho, la charla increíble, ¿no? Vamos, yo lo digo en español así, que todo el que me entienda, yo creo que de un nivel que hemos tenido una suerte increíble de tener a alguien que forma parte del core de RX contándonos lo que nos ha venido a contar, ¿vale? Entonces, voy a seleccionar la pregunta y tenemos que poner a Jan también para que pueda él responder, ¿vale, Juan? Pues, bien, selecciono... Uy, esta no es, que se me ha movido. Es de Antonio, que está aquí. Okay.
Okay. Do you want to translate it in Spanish first, or?
Okay, I'll translate it. Vamos a traducir la pregunta también, por si hay alguien que no maneja muy bien el inglés, pues la traduzco. Antonio Madrid pregunta. Así que, básicamente, RxJS es algún tipo de implementación de programación funcional, ¿no? Okay. All yours, Jan.
Whoa, this was fast. So functional programming is a little bit different from reactive programming. So RxJS implements reactive programming for JavaScript. Functional programming is pretty much talking about how leveraging function as first-class citizen for your needs and how to structure your implementation according to this or around this entity of a function. What reactive programming has in mind is pretty much like, how can we propagate change? And it doesn't really matter if this is in a function way or in a object-oriented way or whatever. It's always just about propagation of change and reacting to that accordingly. Like saying, okay, there's this change happening. How do I want to react on this? And this also introduces concept of push space, because this change is like pushed to you. If you call a function in terms of function programming, you actively decide to call that. This is fundamental different in how you think about problems. Yeah, I think this makes it kind of clear. If it's not fully clear, maybe jump in my Twitter DMs and I'm happy to help you to figure the difference out. But RxJS is using functional programming, but not the other way around.
I think that was an awesome answer, honestly.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm destroying my desk here.
Okay, so next question, Carlos.
Sí. Aquí de nuestro amigo Tony.
Oof.
Okay, voy a...
Dile que Tony es un miembro de la comunidad muy activo, ¿eh?
Yeah, it's going... Honestly, it's fully on hold as far as I know. So I think we reached stage 2, 2015. And there were some major concerns from the TC39 proposal, from the TC39 committee about that. More about the actual need rather than about the implementation in general. I still think there is a need for having an observable as entity within the JavaScript standard. And there are, honestly, the team wants to have that too. Like, everyone in the team would be super happy to have that out, or to have that in the JavaScript ecosystem. It would make this library so much better. Like, tree-shakeability at all is not a concern afterwards. Breaking changes are not a concern afterwards anymore. But it's rough, and it's really a lot of work. And honestly, no one of us is really aware what needs to be done, how this can be restarted and everything. So if I remember correctly, Ben tried to reinitiate that proposal like a year ago, I think. But it's pretty much on hold, and I right now don't see a way how we can get this in a better shape or in a better state to move forward with this, unfortunately.
Okay, so any more questions?
Vanessa hace esta petición.
Yes.
Y tenemos otra pregunta más mientras Jan encuentra el QR.
I don't think I need to translate this question. I think it's simple enough.
Okay.
What is QR code in Spanish?
Código QR.
Oh, what?
Código QR.
Okay, I don't even try to. This would just put a lot of shame on me.
Antonio, que se queda satisfecho con la respuesta. Y vamos con otra pregunta que tenemos aquí, de Medi.
Okay, quick translation. Madi pregunta que si ya tenemos o si ya existen un montón de operadores, ¿hace falta o cree Jan que hace falta que tengamos que crear más operadores personalizados? Okay.
So I definitely think there should be, or there is a need for these kind of convenient operators, the way I phrased it, like just to make or structure your code in a more readable way, so that so for example, what you could do is when you want to apply a null save operator, where you just say like filter out all the null values. That would be actually way helpful, and say like filter falsy or whatever. These kind of things are actually really valuable, but very, very much specific for your very project. I honestly don't see any reason why one wants to create the 105th operator. There are already operators for so edgy cases, like really, Jesus Christ, like window when or window time or whatever. We checked it in the whole Google ecosystem. No one is using window time or whatever. If you find a use case where you say, okay, you need to use window when or whatever for that, and there's no way you can implement it in another way, let me know. But honestly, we try to reduce the API surface for those edgy operators, because Jesus, this is just like, no. So I honestly can't imagine right now out of my head a scenario where you really need to implement a complete new operator from scratch without reusing any operator that is already existing.
I actually completely agree with you. And since I'm actually, tweeting about every single RxJS operator, there's some of them that I'm like, okay, what would I use this for? Like actually find a real use case. And it's like, nope, can't think of one.
Yeah.
So yeah, but well, it's nice to have the option, just I
true,
can
but
custom operator. I'm really cool. Like it's my own operator. So yeah.
Yeah.
It's nice to have the option. So are there any more questions?
Tony agradece la primera y quiere más información, que yo lo veo muy bien. Y ahí está él rascando.
Yes, I love to talk about that actually. So 4 big things, I think. So one super cool thing is we have super great things in mind for RxJS version 8, and everyone is really eager to start with that. So pretty much we have some preparations that we need to do, and this will happen with version 7, and afterwards we have like amazing things planned for RxJS version 8. So small teaser without creating any kind of expectations. Sorry, Ben. The next thing, we improved typings, and this is like the biggest block within this whole ecosystem of RxJS version 7. So, for example, there are a lot of things where we improve the types. For imagine filter with passing the Boolean constructor function. So if you just say filter operator and then Boolean, you would assume that it calls a Boolean constructor function, so it would return false for every falsy value and true for every truthy value. Before that, for some reason, So with RxJS 6, this lead to the fact that the observable was of type unknown, even though filter doesn't change the output type. So this is fixed. Another thing that is really cool is that everywhere where it's taking every operator that takes a function as argument has the option that you could technically return an itinerary if statement, like saying, okay, do something, then return a string, and if something else happened, then return a number. And this was not treated properly by RxJS version 6. Is fixed now. So imagine having switch map, checking if something is online, then return a fixed value. No, if you're not online, return a fixed value. If you're online, then perform an HTTP request. And for some reason, the return type differentiate here. Then this would properly infer the type now. There was a minor flaw with scan and reduce, where it was actually taking the type from the accumulator value. So if you said, okay, accumulator is of type any, then your observable afterwards was of type any, even though the function that you were specifying within that reduce statement were always returning a string or whatever. This is fixed. These are like the big things with typings. There's also the new change with terms of the creation functions for like concat, merge, and stuff like that, because we had pendants for that before RxJS 6, we had a pipeable merge operator that you could use in a pipe statement, and we had a creation function taking multiple observables and merging them together. With RxJS 6, the first option, having a pipeable merge operator, was gone due to foreseen name collisions that you had to differentiate. Okay, I now need to import merge from that package and not from that package. And what happens if you want to have both? That would actually not work. And therefore, we introduced with RxJS 7 merge with. So pretty much all of those examples where you might want to use this function inside of the pipe method, we have a star with pendant, like merge with, concat with, zip with. Now that I talk about it, I'm not sure if there's a fork join with, but like these kind of scenarios. And the last thing, which is super cool, but is still like actually one of the main blockers for RxJS 7 to be released, is the animation frame observable. So before, there are some hacks where you could get an observable emitting every animation frame. But now we introduced an animation frame observable that could be used to have to do or to implement really smooth animations. Or if you want to schedule things in a different way or whatever. The thing is, this is fairly difficult to test in a very reasonable way. Not for us, but to provide you with the proper tools, you as RxJS users with the proper tools to test code that uses the animation frame observable. So this is why this is a little bit on hold right now, even though I would really love to have that, because animations with that are like so beautiful. Yeah, this is pretty much all we have planned so far for RxJS 7. Yes.
I have a question. I'm typing it on the chat right now, so if you just give me 10 seconds, I'll finish typing.
Take your time.
Ok, pues transmitirle a Jan, ahora si tú quieres, Estefanía, que ha gustado mucho, hay muchos mensajes de agradecimiento.
There's another question.
No, una question. Ya. Question queda una, pero es que es Tony que está insistiendo. Venga, vamos a coger la de Tony. Así me gusta.
Okay.
Tony, tienes que aprovechar.
Yeah, translate it first.
Ok, traduciendo. A lo mejor se sale del tema, pero ¿sabes si el equipo del core de Angular está interesado en mejorar la integración con RxJS? Okay, all yours.
Okay, so first of all, we're talking or having a very close relationship with the Angular team itself. Ben used to be in the Angular team before. He is still in a very active exchange with them. And also in general, for those of you who are not aware of that, actually RxJS code is quality assured inside the Google source code base. So the same way Angular is quality assured, that every Google project using Angular is using the latest Angular version in GitHub. The same goes for RxJS. So every time we break something, which unfortunately happens quite often, someone in Google will ping us like, hey, you know this change? Yeah, that broke like 500 Google projects. Amazing. So this things first. In terms of reactivity of the Angular framework, I am not aware of any major changes planned. I know that the reactive forms module is finally going to improve, which I'm really like, because this used to be so bad. But if you ask me, honestly, I'm not well, I honestly would say like either Angular needs to improve really much on the reactivity or really needs to lower it down. Because right now it's in this middle state, and developers need to learn RxJS to use Angular, but not really. And therefore, I saw so many broken RxJS code in Angular applications because developers are forced to use it, but don't need to use it that often or that much that they need to learn it properly. And honestly, in terms of framework design, I would honestly say like Angular should be less reactive, because if you're really familiar with RxJS, you can implement most of the stuff that is in the Angular ecosystem right now within like 5 lines of RxJS code. Like honestly, the event emitter is just a subject under the hood. Host listener is just from event. HTTP client is just pretty much we're having. So the HTTP client, we're drafting on a new Ajax implementation because we already have an Ajax observable performing an HTTP request. And the new implementation will look quite similar to what's inside Angular for the HTTP client. So there's not that much of reactivity inside the Angular framework that couldn't be done on your own if you want to use RxJS. Yes. So sorry, to that question, I don't know about any plans to improve the integration in general. I know about plans for improving the reactive forms API, which is highly appreciated, especially by me. But besides that, I know that there are some proposals, but I honestly think most of the integration for reactive API should rather go inside the NGRX platform than inside Angular. That's just my go on that.
Okay, pretty long answer. Thank
Sorry.
you. No, I mean, it's a good thing.
I'm very biased about that topic. I'm well aware of that.
Bueno, pues aquí hay otra pregunta de Nia.
That one's mine.
Do you want to translate it?
Yeah, sure. Mi pregunta es que Michael RX Flatky, o no, la verdad que no sé cómo se pronuncia su apellido.
No te preocupes, que yo lo digo igual, ¿eh?
Es que no lo sé, sinceramente, no tengo ni idea. Ha estado trabajando en unos diagramas de canicas nuevos y le pregunta a Jan que si tienen pensado integrarlos en la documentación de RxJS. So, do you know how to pronounce his surname? Because I certainly don't.
Well, I know how to pronounce it in German, which would be Latki. So the H is entirely silent. Oh, that's the way he pronounced it in German.
Silent H. Okay. I'll remember.
Sorry, that was the best thing in my whole day so far. This was like perfect. And okay, sorry. So we talked about this with Michael quite often. The thing is, we honestly get a lot of feedback about the marble diagrams in general. Like, many people are complaining that they are way too complicated anyway and are not really helpful with understanding. The marble diagrams are really good in some certain scenarios. So what's happening is that they show the internals, how an operator is working. So if you saw the proposal for him for the switch map marble diagram, you will notice that it demonstrates that how internally it subscribes and unsubscribes to the inner observables. And this is, for some things, it's amazing to have these level of details. Docs are fairly difficult. So sometimes when you're having the docs, you just want to go there, see like, okay, I'm putting this in, that's the output, that's it. So you have a lot of different user groups within the docs. And this is really a thing we need to learn and need to find out what's the best way to go. And right now we say like, okay, don't add this complexity, this level of detail. And we don't have concrete plans to add them. This might change if we get concrete feedback like, okay, I tried to look at your marble diagrams and then I looked at Michael's diagrams. And honestly, I didn't understand yours, but I understood this. Or for these and that reasons, they were way more helpful for me. This is the kind of feedback that we need to change our mind to say like, okay, let's change it to Michael's diagram. Yes.
Okay. So if you want a teeny tiny bit of my feedback right now,
yes.
For example, for switch map, merge map, and so on, I found that your original marble diagrams, I have no idea like what's going on for these operators. And then Michael's, they were really helpful because, as you said, they have a higher level of, detail, so you can really understand what's going on. As for the rest of the operators, the more simple ones, I really don't. I can use yours or I can use Michael's. I don't really mind. But when you have, nested inner observables, then I found it helpful to have a little more detail to understand what's going on.
My concern about this argument, particularly about switch map, is that for this to this marble diagram to understand, you also need to know about the other observable or creation function used. Yeah. And therefore you're jumping around.
True.
Docs are fairly difficult. I'm struggling with that a lot.
Yeah, I can understand where you're coming from. So yeah, that was just my, my little.
No, I really appreciate it. Like any kind of this feedback is super helpful for us to figure out what's the best way to go with this topic. And right now we still have we are still having the opinion that in like 90% of the cases, our approach is more helpful for most of the users. But if we see like from user feedback, okay, it isn't the case and it's just our biased assumption, this is totally fine. I'm happy to change all of them and
Okay, thank you for your answer.
You're welcome.
Bueno, pues más preguntas no tenemos. Ya sí vamos a pasar a todo eso agradecimiento y gracias, por lo menos un repasito rápido para que Jan vea que desde Málaga, desde cualquier lado del mundo, la charla ha gustado y ha gustado mucho y que cuando él venga a Málaga, pues la comunidad de AngularMálaga le va a dar, la bienvenida seguro y montamos un evento.
Okay, so basically what Carlos just said is that we don't have any more questions, but he wanted to showcase all of the thank you that everyone sends you and that you are very, very welcome to come to Malaga whenever you want, like for a real on-site event when all of this,
I used to be there 2 years ago. I'm so sorry that I didn't know you guys. It was like, I actually asked on Meetup one, like, okay, I would like to do a talk. What's up? Like, how can we arrange that? But I didn't know you. And yeah, it didn't work out.
We're actually like, AngularMálaga was created some time before, but then the activity kind of stopped because the organizers, went on to other things. So we actually came along a few months ago and we started, reviving the community. Nice. So cool. Honestly, we're just like, I don't know, maybe 5 months old. So don't worry. Next time you come to Málaga, we'll welcome you with open arms.
I will ping you.
Awesome.
Pues, bueno, si queréis pasamos al sorteo. ¿Cómo lo veis?
Yeah, okay. So we're going to do the giveaway now for the NGConf Colombia tickets. So, so
I really appreciate it. And you three did really a fantastic job. I'm still amazed, like I would like to be that professional for my meetup too. Like, sorry for everyone that attends my meetups. I will never be able to do something like that. It's like,
oh, thank you so much. Would you like to stay for the giveaway, like
yes,
to
sure.
see it? Or
Sure.
Oh, awesome! So I'm just going to share my screen, and we're going to select 5 random winners. So let's go. Right. So we are going to use this tiny application called Lucky Retweet. So basically, all I have to do is paste, the Twitter URL. Let me just find. All right, select the number of winners, which is going to be 5 because, we only have 5 tickets. And press draw.
Espera. Bueno, lo cuento yo en español si quieres.
Perdón.
Ahí tenemos los 5 ganadores. Ya lo cuento rápido. Ha sido un sorteo que hemos usado la herramienta y las 5 ganadores lo que tienen que hacer es escribirnos un mensaje directo por Twitter y le damos la entrada de la NGConf de Colombia. Que vamos a ver los ganadores.
So these
AngularMálaga, nuestros amigos, ¿qué hacemos? ¿Hay alguien de AngularMálaga aquí que quiera recogerla?
So just in case that those 5 people watch this talk, actually at Conf Colombia, I'm doing the same talk. So I'm kind of sorry for you.
Oh, well, doesn't matter. Oh, by the way, we didn't mention this, but both Carlos and I will be speakers at Conf Colombia as well. So we'll see you there.
Cool. What's the topic, if you want to spoil me?
Sure, scalable Angular architecture.
Cool.
Thank you.
Bueno, pues estamos hablando de que la NGConf de Colombia, pues vamos a estar de ponentes los 3 que estamos en pantalla. Va a estar Jan y voy a estar yo con Estefanía. Y bueno, pues tenéis entrada y nos vamos a ver ahí que creo que era el 14 de agosto y 15 de agosto. Y por ahí veo ya gente feliz que le ha tocado por el chat.
Okay, so our lucky retweeters, all you have to do is send us, a direct message on Twitter, and we'll send you the ticket for NGConf Colombia. Oh, last thing. Juan, ¿me puedes poner la diapositiva rosa otra vez?
¿Veis el cambio de idioma, cómo lo hace?
We also have a promotional code for those who haven't gotten lucky on the giveaway. You can buy the NGConf Colombia tickets at 50% off. So if I can just get the pink slide back on that has a promotional code. Carlos, could you share your slide again?
Un segundo porque no la tengo cargada.
If not, I'll just share the code on Twitter and then that's okay.
Tengo que descargarla, con lo cual...
Doesn't matter, I can share it. Sorry, everyone, for the slight technical problems. Okay.
Presentación.
I'm sharing.
La tienes tú, ¿no? Te pongo en pantalla.
I pressed on the wrong button. Sorry.
La pongo, ¿no?
I've got it already. Okay. So, everyone. Okay, why isn't this going full screen? Okay, can everyone see the code or not? Okay, so here's the promotional code for getting the tickets at 50% off. You can either access the first URL or just go to the ngconf.co, the normal site, and use promotional code Malaga, and you will get 50% off your ticket. If you want to say that in Spanish, Carlos.
Sí, que aparte de los 5 tickets que se han sorteado, que sepáis que la NGConf, en lugar de hacerse presencial, se hace online. Creo que tiene un coste de $10, pero que con el cupón de la Comunidad de Málaga se queda en el 50%, con lo cual serían $5. Es el evento de 2 días y, bueno, o tenéis el enlace directo o podéis usar el simple código de Málaga, pero sin tilde, ¿vale? Todo minúscula. Y aprovecharlo. Si tenéis interés, veis el cartel, hay un cartelazo realmente. Las charlas son en español y en inglés, con lo cual es casi parecido a lo que hemos estado haciendo hoy. Y nada, Estefanía, hablamos de si todo va bien, quizás el próximo mitad se haga presencial o si no, seguimos de esta manera. Lo que sí vamos a hacer, que hemos decidido, es seguir transmitiendo de alguna manera a todo el mundo. Y aunque nos reunamos y estemos presencialmente, también vamos a transmitirlo online.
Yeah, so basically, if everything goes well, our next meetup will be able to be, on site. And if not, well, we'll be streaming again. A decision we've decided, sorry about that. We're going to be streaming all our events, even if they're on site, so anyone, can see the talk, even if they can't physically come to Malaga. Okay, and with this, we'll wrap up. Thank you again, Jan. Thank you so much for being here with us. Thank you all, all our attendees for coming. You were amazing, as always. So, bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Nos vemos.
Bye.